Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Kazan in Russia on Tuesday to take part in the 16th BRICS Summit being hosted by Russia. The summit is expected to cover a broad range of issues, including economic cooperation, climate change, and digital inclusion. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also be holding bilateral meetings with his counterparts from BRICS member nations and other invited leaders. Remember, the BRICS grouping comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa account for 45% of the global population, and with economies that account for 28% of the global economy. Being hosted by Russia, the summit is being seen as an attempt by non-Western powers to project their clout and influence in the midst of an ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Now, this is also the first summit of the grouping after it was expanded in Johannesburg recently. The new members of BRICS include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. Now, this comes at an interesting time too, even as India and China have reached an agreement on patrolling on the border where we have seen violent clashes in the past. That's China confirming on India-China deal, in China confirming progress on India-China agreement, viewing India-China border patrol deal positively, saying that we will work towards with India to implement solution. In fact, India and China in close communication on border issues. There is China confirming what the Foreign Secretary said yesterday. Also, BRICS Summit is happening when the diplomatic dispute between India and Canada has escalated. Both sides have expelled each other's diplomats. So what is the significance of an expanded BRICS Summit, and what will be the undercurrents considering all that is going on is something we will discuss. But first, let's also take a look at what the Army Chief said yesterday and other reactions.
As far as we are concerned, we were looking at that we want to go back to the status quo of April 2020. Point number one. Thereafter, we will be looking at disengagement, de-escalation, normal management of line of actual control. And this normal management of line actual control will not just stop there. There are phases in that also. So this what I am saying, it has been our stance from April 20 itself when General Y.K. Joshi was the army commander, and even today that remains the same way. So as of now, what has happened? We are trying to restore the trust. How the trust will get restored? It will get restored once we are able to see each other. And we are able to convince each other, look, the buffer zones which are there, which have been created, we are not creeping. And both have to reassure each other. Patrolling gives you that kind of advantage. So that's what is something which is commencing. And as we restore the trust, the other stages will also follow through soon.
In fact, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke about India-China relationship in NDTV World Summit 2024 yesterday, and this is what he said.
What Foreign Secretary has said is what I can also say, that for those who have not heard that we reached an agreement on patrolling, and with that the disengagement, we have gone back to where the situation was in 2020, and we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say has been completed. So, so far I would say that's as much as I can share with you. I'm sure in due course इसके details वगैरह निकलेंगे.
So, will now India be able to patrol in the areas of Galwan, Depsang?
No, you see, there are areas which, for various reasons, after 2020, because they had blocked us, so we had blocked them. So, दो तरफा था, Bob. So what has happened is we have reached an understanding which will allow the patrolling. For example, you spoke about Depsang. That's not the only place. There are other places also. So I think the understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
So what are India's expectations from the BRICS Summit that is going on in Kazan in Russia? What is going to be India's position on various issues? And most importantly, with India, will India and China's agreement pave the way for Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping's talks at BRICS? My colleague Kadambini, who's reporting from Kazan, has this explainer.
Lots of excitement, lots of anticipation, as not only the old members of founding members of BRICS, but also the new members have joined at Kazan BRICS Summit. 5 new members. So now BRICS is a 10-member economic bloc, and it is very important to see what new decisions are being taken by this new BRICS, expanded BRICS. There are reports of several other nations wanting to join the BRICS, but whether the mechanism would be different, there would be a different category, is still to be seen. But what was washed quite cleanly today is the bilateral between the Russian President Vladimir Putin as well as Prime Minister Modi. In the opening statements, while President Putin said that India has a very close relationship with Russia and strategic relationship with Russia, PM Modi, as expected, he talked about a peaceful resolution of Russia-Ukraine conflict, and he said that India is ready to do whatever is required for this peaceful resolution, which should happen very soon. So this is something, that's the note on which the bilateral talk between the two started. But there is something else also which is being watched and keenly awaited. That is whether there would be a bilateral talk between PM Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping, because this anticipation, this is coming after yesterday's announcement by the Foreign Secretary that there has been a breakthrough as far as LAC issue between India and China goes, and now the petroleum agreement has been made and the situation will go back to what it was in 2020. So after that, there is an expectation that there might be a bilateral between the Chinese President and the Indian PM. Whether that happens or not, there is no clarity yet.
That was my colleague reporting from Kazan. We also have Skand Tayal, who is a former diplomat. We have Lieutenant General Satish Dua, former Chief Integrated Defence Staff. We have Major General Sanjay Meston, who is a defence analyst. We have Dr. Tara Karta, former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, and also Andrew Long, who is an international and independent China strategist. Thank you all of you for joining me on this broadcast. To you, Mr. Tayal, first, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be holding a series of bilateral meetings, including with what we saw with the Russian president, and also some with Iran president. And of course, there is this big anticipation over what is going to happen with Xi Jinping. Can you tell us what are the expectations like this time surrounding the BRICS Summit, considering that India has managed to in some ways maintain diplomatic neutrality in recent world events, but has also been asserting its position as the voice of Global South?
As far as BRICS is concerned, I think BRICS is at a crossroads. We all remember in 2001, 2006, 2008, the original formation was for rising and rapidly growing economies. At that time, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And that continued. South Africa came in. Now, last year, South Africa, I would say in somewhat hurried manner, 6 more members were added. And perhaps due diligence was not done because Argentina refused to join. Saudi Arabia is still not joined. So now the focus shifting? Is BRICS no longer a organization of rapidly growing economies? Is it becoming an organization of Global South? Now, Global South has 125 members. And I wonder how China can claim to be a member of Global South, even Russia for that matter. So there are very fundamental issues which BRICS has to deal with.
Right.
Is it going to become a group of 77 in a new avatar? I believe in Johannesburg, India had tried to say that let there be some criteria for new members, but it did not happen. So I think BRICS is facing some kind of a very important issue, that what is its mandate, what is its direction, what is its future, what kind of members it will have. Every member will bring its own problems. Iran is under sanctions, it will have its own problems. Then if LDCs will come, couple of countries, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, they are on the verge of bankruptcy. They will bring their own problems. So it will become like a group of 77. So I think that is one of the important problems as far as BRICS is concerned.
Okay, that's very well said. In fact, there are questions as to if the BRICS grouping itself is completely an anti-West grouping, because not everyone seems to be sharing a sense of antipathy towards the West. Satish Dua, Lieutenant General Satish Dua, sir, in the last 36 hours, we've seen a lot of developments, especially with both India and China making significant headway in their efforts to resolve this military standoff. Do you think that this is the start of something that could proceed towards de-escalation, and how is that going to reflect on the ongoing BRICS Summit?
Question for me?
Mr. Dua? Yes, sir.
May I continue?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. I said the short answer to your question is yes. I see this as the start of something new, because both sides have given a statement that we have resolved the major issues. But the fine print is yet to be out. And we must remember that when such vexed issues are being spoken about, we have to take baby steps initially. Trust building is a very important part of the CBMs, the confidence building measures. The Nathula issue that we had in mid-70s, 1974 to be precise, took more than 2 decades to resolve. Now that the statement has come out, and we are going to see some trust building factors, the army chief, we just heard the army chief statement, and I think we will get more details in due course of time. But I think we have made a good beginning, and let's wait for the details to emerge.
Right. Andy Leong, would you like to respond to that, sir? Because with India and China, you know, it's well known that both countries have legacy issues, and this predate to almost the 2020 Chinese incursions that we saw. Do you see this as a move of towards restoration of political and bilateral ties? Do you see that happening anytime soon, considering both India and China have come out with statements now?
First of all, let's get real. This patrolling accord doesn't mean that the immediate resolution of all the border disputes between India and China, which remain deep-seated, is a legacy of history. I think that there's going to remain dividing the country on both sides for a very long time. But what it means is a definite attempt to de-escalate, as both leaders highlighted this need months ago, even well before this BRICS Summit. I think that this is a very important step because it's a concrete protocol, and then this protocol can be repeated in other border areas. So I think that this is a beginning of a momentum for a more constructive relationship between the two countries at a time of the rise of the global South, which of course is a game changer of the global world order. The world order led by American hegemony is slowly falling apart. And you can see that the United States no longer can call the shots all the time. And while the world is becoming more multipolar, for example, India has got a different approach to Russia and not entirely tied to the Americans' chariot. But on the other hand, it's also got a foot at the other block. And for example, Quad, the American-led military alliance target China, for example. And there is no indication, and I don't think that the United States, that India wants to decouple from the West, nor, for that matter, other BRIC members, because the whole world is interconnected. What it means is that the global South is rallying themselves together against a American dominated kind of hegemonic system, which encroaches on their individual sovereignty. I think that's and then the BRIC framework is a very, very good platform for them to share their experiences and to agree on common on modus operandi, areas of cooperation in terms of climate change, security, trade, and so on.
Right. Major General Sanjay Meston, would you agree with what Mr. Leong just said? And also, what does this mean for Russia? Because Kremlin has called the BRICS Summit that it is hosting one of the largest scale foreign policy events. And 20 heads of emerging economies are going to be there. Do you see this also as a gesture by Russia to prove a point that it can't be really dislodged from the world stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, the statement made by the Chinese representative. I think I would also state that the confidence building measures, firstly, it's been a good beginning. And it's a long process, it's a slow process, it will take time. However, why it has happened, I think I will take from the army chief's statement, one word is very, very clear. Everything has happened based on the trust. This trust has been evolved over some period of time by the ground commanders at all levels of the both sides, and they have carried out restraint. And as the army chief mentioned, that they have not defined the buffer zones, and therefore all these issues will be discussed.
Right.
And I perhaps feel that the way we are going on, it's a good beginning. It will take a lot of time, and I also feel that the timing of this announcement is very important because it has just been announced one day before the BRICS. So this perhaps sets a stage for a bilateral meeting with the President Xi Jinping and our Prime Minister. I think it is on the cards, and I'm quite optimistic about it. Now, what Russia gains out of this is, see, firstly, we are aware that a lot of people are calling it as anti-West or counter-West. I think it is probably an alternative to the West. That is how I would put it. And probably Russia is gaining because after the sanctions of the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia was getting little isolated. Not today, as on date, of course, 10 members are there, but not only 10 members, there are 36 countries attending this BRICS summit. So this itself proves, that Russia today is now gaining overall. There are countries supporting it, and probably India. And of course, a point was made whether Russia and China can be part of the global south. I tend to agree. But India is, I think, one of the leaders of the global south. So we have a major role in this. And I think Russia is overall gaining because it is alternative to the West. And let's see how it unfolds. But yes, I agree with the first speaker, Ambassador Tyal, that it is going to take a lot of time. BRICS is not going to be easy because it can be group of 77 and all those things. And imagine 3 countries of Eurasia, Russia, China, and India, and all are major powers, and we are neighbors. So it is not easy. There will be competition and competitiveness. So how it unfolds in the near future, it is to be seen.
Tarakarta, as this is, of course, the newly expanded BRICS bloc convening for the first time, and there is a similarity amongst its members, and of course, most of them have economic ties with China. Some of the newer members are also dependent on China. Where does that leave India that's already trying to solve a problem it has with China?
No, I think, well, in terms of BRICS, if I can just say, the one thing which stands out is here is a man against whom there's an arrest warrant out, and he's International Court of Justice, and he's, sitting at this table with a bunch of leaders. That is huge, right? So he's saying he doesn't look like he's sanctioned at all. As far as India, I mean, I don't think they're dependent on China. For example, Brazil, I think, has just brought out one huge list of tariffs against Chinese products. So there are tensions between them. These things will continue, right? Because it's a natural thing between countries. For us, the thing is that China is a neighbor with whom you have a tension, you have this problem going. Trust building is going to be a long process. This is just baby steps. I mean, let me just give you one report which had come out recently, was that a large, huge village settlement is being built just 30 kilometers, I think, east of Pangong Tso.
Right.
Are you going to remove that? There is the whole build-up of forces. All that is going to take time. But this is, like General Dua said, is a very welcome step. And let me remind you of one thing. There are a bunch of countries who would not want India and China to get on a stable footing. I won't say more than that, but they are going to be watching whether this bilateral takes place. if you look at how the commentaries are, they're saying, oh, this is, it's just tactical, which is right. Right now, it's just a tactical move.
Right.
But a lot of people are going to watch this. That is where we differ from the other BRICS countries, like Saudi Arabia is making, it's making a very strong push towards this. If you remember, he was, the Saudi prince refused an invitation to the G20.
Right.
And he then decided to come to BRICS. So there's a lot of, push and pull going on. But for us, this is a very, what shall I say? It's a very critical issue. If India and China get along well, then BRICS goes somewhere.
Well, that's very well said. Andrew Leong, also last word from you, sir, because it's just not India and China who have their differences in the grouping. There's also tension between some of the newest members, Egypt and Ethiopia. So, despite talk of, despite talks, Iran and Saudi have also been regional allies. How is the BRICS going to navigate these internal differences and get itself heard? Because not everybody seems to share a sense of aversion towards the West, and India also seems to be looking at this not just as an anti-West grouping.
Well, I think that China had been quite successful, for example, in brokering historic rapprochement for example, in the Arab Peninsula between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Who have been at loggerheads with one another for decades. And I think that this China's strategies so far depends on highlighting the importance of connectivity, because the whole world is connected together. And of course, China still remains the largest trading partner to 24 countries around the world, to 128 countries around the world. So I think that China's strategy has always been focused on connectivity, on mutual cooperation. But that's not to forget that there are differences, even between friends, between China's closest allies. But the idea is not to let these differences divide the two countries on a broad front, because the idea of blocks, while it doesn't work anymore, but the idea of cooperation, of mutual understanding and mutual respect, all these principles do hold.
Time for a short break.